Ruler School is brought to you by Happy Little Hug Factory and these amazing patrons. Extra special thank you to guest lecturer patrons Brody Harris, Lance Albertson, and Monica. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there guys, DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week. Really focused on the deck on the left here, this Scarlett, I guess I could call it Spellslinger list, inspired by Benjamin Bargetzi. He came back to me a while ago with this blue, black, red Scarlett idea, and so I kind of re-updated it. And I wanted to kind of give it a shot. So huge thanks to Pete on the right for being willing to sit down and play against the list with his Black-White Millium fairy tales. He was just kind of trying some stuff out, but he was gracious enough to be able to sit down across from me and let me show off kind of how the deck works a little bit. So yeah, so kind of my commentary is going to be a little bit focused on the left side of the list of the screen here, mainly because I kind of want to explain kind of what the idea is behind this Scarlett list, kind of what it's shooting for, and kind of my thought process while we were playing it. Ultimately, I have tried to get the deck list from Pete, but I don't have the deck list offhand, so I'm not entirely sure kind of where he was going with the list. First stone here is a Awakened Stone the Errant, so he has to pay the 3 life. Ultimately, I'm not necessarily sure what his thought process was for paying the 3 life if he didn't have a turn 1. The Scarlett list in the first couple turns is very much Call Stone Pass. We're using a lot of trying to pitch the cards in our hand to keep our opponent's board state completely clear, and so we're completely safe from damage. Drawing cards with things like Reunion, and then eventually hitting to the point where we play Welser and then burn them for 40 damage, or use like Welser plus World Flame Summoning to clear the board and deal like 16 damage. So he's going to play this Dark Bakuro, which stops me from paying 1 more for chance on his turn. Don't really care about that because most of my burning is going to come from Scarlett herself. And I do a lot of work during the upkeep in this game, just with this deck. I'm going to go ahead and also I use a lot of discard to kind of keep my opponent's hand shaped to what I can deal with my Scarlett list. So the idea is if you can keep your opponent's hand kind of geared and shifted towards what you can deal with, then it's very easy for you to just keep the curve in your favor and just win the game. So what I'm going to make him discard here is the Magic Suites. I start to grab the Dark Bakuro, but I can easily kill that. So I grab the Magic Suites because I don't want him to be able to have Instant Speak Barrier in response to any of my Scarlett burns. I want all of my Scarlett burns to be very, very effective. So Magic Suites actually is better for me to grab in the long run. Stone of Dark Castle, so he gets a mystery counter here. Sitting on in my turn, you see I have a Severing Winds in there, as well as a Charlotte's Protector, which is a great way to filter. Reunion of Master and Pupil, which is an excellent dig card for Scarlett decks, especially the one that I'm playing. A lot of fire spells, or fire chants, and a lot of fire resonators in it. Plays a Tinkerbell, and then tries to follow it up with a the 2-drop that gains Kintaro. Kintaro, he gains +1/+1 for every fairy tale when he enters the field. I'm going to respond to Kintaro's effect here by using Scarlett's effect to pay red and pitch a dinosaur to burn it for 7. So before he gains the +1/+1 counters, he'll get burned for 7 damage and then he'll get killed. Like I said, the whole point of this deck is to keep the curve on my level. When I played the Thought Control, I knew I had a Dino in hand, so I could deal with a Kintaro easily, so Magic Suites was the better card to deal with. Calling for Stone, hitting a Dark Depths. Honestly, in playing the deck, it's the one stone that I kind of don't like. I would rather just play Hearthcores to have more red than I did initially. Paying 2 here. Thinking about playing 2 to play Reunion of Master and Pupil, to start digging my hand a little bit deeper, maybe finding some of my combo pieces. The main combo pieces are World Flame Summoning or Ancient Impact, and then Welser, the 6-drop Welser with the Goddard. Decided to kind of hold off the turn. You see I already have a Welser in hand, so really just digging at this point for an Ancient Impact. Once the deck hits to 8 stones, the game's practically over, unless your opponent has some way to remove Welser off the board, because you can Goddard during the upkeep, and then Caster 8, and both of the spells are uncancelable. So it's really great, although they can cancel Welser's effect. But in this matchup against a deck that's not running green, it seems like, Lorite's not going to be a problem, so I'm pretty safe. Swinging in with the Tinkerbell for a grand total of 5 damage. Gonna go ahead and pitch the Charlotte's Protector to try to burn it for 5. Charlotte's Protector will trigger and I'll get to draw a card as well. Tinkerbell's going to die, save myself, and actually get a Charlotte's Protector off of the draw, which is really awesome. And then before the draw on my turn, I'm going to do a neat little effect here. So I'm going to, because I can't target him with red stuff, right? I have to play this a little bit backwards. But referring the upkeep, I can pitch use Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic, make it a 4/4 bear, and then pitch a Protector to burn it for 5, so killing the Grim. Now, the weird thing here is against any other card, you can actually kind of do this in reverse. So you can use Scarlett's effect to pitch the Charlotte to burn something for 5, and then from the graveyard cast the Charlottes, thus killing the Grim, the target, because it'll become a 4/4 that has 5 damage on it, so it'll immediately die. So it's essentially turning any Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic into a Stoning to Death, which is really good, especially considering how you could pay 1 before upkeep and 1 after upkeep, and really kind of stay ahead. I'd like to see Stoning to Death try to be that efficient in terms of will. Now that I have some will to play around with, I'm going to play the Reunion of Master and Pupil. So I get to dig 5. I'm going to potentially dig into another Reunion because it kind of like helps me dig a little bit deeper. I also have the Null Darkness potential there in my hand. Null Darkness is great because it's just a Stoning to Death, right? So I can kill anything for 2 if I need to, if it's made potentially too big, especially now that I've used one of my Charlotte's Water Transformation Magics. I do decide to grab the Master, though, and then the Prokaryotic Being, who is kind of the backup win condition of the deck, and the reason why this deck is so heavily spell-focused. So this deck casts a lot of chance. It casts a lot of pitching stuff to the graveyard using Scarlett, and eventually it gets to this point where Prokaryotic Being is like 18-18, 20-20, 22-22, and so for like 3 or 4 will, suddenly you've got this massive body that just flies in and kills your opponent instantly, or at least takes half their life, or if you've stuck a single burn spell earlier or later, it's fine. Plus it makes for Ancient Impact to just be an instant kill spell later. This deck pretty much only cares about you being at 2 life states, alive or dead, so there's no kind of middle ground, which is why it doesn't really care about playing creatures early. Pete decides to go ahead and do the Judgment of Millium. He's going to get to recover the stone because it is a light ruler, and then when Millium flips it, is going to ramp him a stone, so pretty good. He doesn't really skip tempo here, flipping back over that Magic Stone of Hope to the front side. It was in backside in his stone deck. So he gets to do a flip here and still be at 3 will. That's pretty good. The question is, how much of a follow-up does his hand allow him to have? So the unfortunate thing about Millium too is that his base stats are a 9/9, which makes for some pretty awkward situations. Pete deciding to not do anything else on his turn, so passing to me. Drawing per turn into a second Severing Winds. So I will admit that this deck is one of those weird decks that's not playing any green and is playing a Severing Winds, and there's a reason for that, simply because 1, it's a spell, and 2, sometimes you need to make sure your combo gets protected. Hitting the Ebon home off the top, I start to go cast a Final Battle, but I'm thinking about life point for how much I want to pay for it. Ultimately, because I know that he has the Dreams of Flight in his hand, because I looked at his hand earlier, I have to think about what I can do to potentially get around the Dreams of Flight. I don't want his Millium to survive. Having the double Severing in hand, however, means that I'm pretty safe from being able to answer whatever he's going to try to do. So thinking about, ultimately, I end up deciding to play 30 life. So the reason why I'm paying 30 life is it'll do -15, -15. So even if he gets a perfect roll on the Dreams of Flight, he has to cast a second Dreams of Flight, which I can punish with the Severing Winds. And even if he has another card after that, I can punish that again with another Severing Winds. So it just essentially guarantees that I'm going to be able to wipe the board and get the Millium off the board. Sure, it's putting me down to 7 life, but it also leaves me with a ton of will left over to be able to kill whatever he tries to play in the follow-up with things like Null Darkness or all my pitches to burn spells. I'm also getting very close to just being done with the game, right? Because I'm at 5 stones, and ultimately I just need to get to 8. So I just need to survive a few more turns, and then I can end the game. Even have the World Flame summoning in there, which is really great to be able to potentially wipe the board if he does try to follow up or establish something in the interim after I do this board wipe. So paying the 30 life, going down to a grand total of 7. Pete's thinking about how he wants to potentially respond. Casting the Dreams of Flight. Gonna let that one resolve. Rolls a 2. Cast the second Dreams of Flight. I'll respond by having the Severing Winds to cancel it. And so the board is successfully wiped. And then I can nicely follow it up by sticking a prokaryotic being, who at this point in time is a 12-12. Or at this certain time is a 10-10. So a pretty strong body to back up my board after having wiped his. The other cool thing is that in the upkeep of next turn, if I don't actually have to worry about casting any spells or discarding any cards, but he sets up a blocker potentially, I could even make prokaryotic being flying by paying blue. I could have hit him for 7 here by like paying red and giving it swiftness, but it's no real threat to the point red. And like I said, this deck doesn't really care about anything in between being at 40 life or 0 life. So me swinging for 10 at that point really wouldn't actually make much of a difference. I'd rather have prokaryotic as a potential blocker. Just gonna pay to put in the 2 Abduls. Drawing for turn. In the upkeep, I'm going to burn my Energize and 1 red to activate the God Art of Welser. Go to recovery, call my stone, get to 6 stones. Like I said, this is one of the cool things that Welser can do, right? One of the kind of middle of the ground things. Play World Flame Summoning, and Welser will copy it. The modes are to burn the board for 8 and to burn Pete for 8. Now, the copy of the spell with Welser is an exact copy, meaning I can't choose new modes for it or new targets. But still, getting to do 16 damage to his board and 16 damage to him, and then I can swing in for 12 damage with prokaryotic, putting him down to 9 while keeping up a 14-14 blocker until the end of Pete's turn. At that point in time, it makes it so that he has to play something that can deal with prokaryotic or kill me in that turn, get through Welser, and then kill me, which is very unlikely. Otherwise, he's just dead next turn because I can just make prokaryotic flying, swing in, and kill the game. So at that point in time, he just says, yep, that's it. I can't really do anything. We'll scoop and we'll go to the next game. Moving into game 2. Same thing. He puts me on the draw, which I think might be the right choice, but I also am not entirely sure, giving me the ability to draw an extra card when I potentially am wanting to dig into my combo pieces, as well as the extra starting will to be able to kind of stay ahead of his curve is always helpful. So what you see that happen there is he had told me that it was okay to go ahead and draw my cards, and then he started to go cut my deck, and I was like, wait, what are you talking about? So we just got a little ahead of ourselves there. Pete had forgotten that he had said it was okay for me to just draw my 5. So we were resetting the deck, as it were. So Pete's hope in this instance is to potentially stay a little bit ahead of the curve, maybe stick something like a Ray or a 0 early on, or just get an early damage before I can start picking his field apart. Ultimately, that opening card of a Thought Control really just lets me say, let's start the curve on my terms, really. I see the Peter Pan. Dark Bakuro doesn't really do anything against me. The Sword of Fate doesn't really do anything, and a Dreams of Flight doesn't really do anything. I can always rip it out of his hand later. Plays that Stone of Hope. Phase 2 for Dark Bakuro. Tries to swing in, I'll burn my Energize, pitch a Charlotte's Protector, burn it for 5, and draw a card. Then I get to draw for turn. See, I already have Ancient Impact in turn there, so the countdown clock is already kind of there. I just need to find a Welser at this point. And in fact, I already have one in hand, so at this point in time, my job becomes get to the 8th stone and end the game. I have a Glint of Insight in hand, and I think about casting it. I go ahead and decide to, and I think I grab Dreams of Flight at this point in time, just because I don't want him to potentially have a way to stay outside of my burn damage range, especially now that I know that I'm literally just on a countdown clock until the end of the game. He had another Peter Pan in hand, which is a little unfortunate, but at the same time I don't really care because it does tap him out and there's no real aggression coming in, as Dark Bakuro also is just a 0/10. So even if he pays 3, he sets himself up for being able to potentially just take a massive like board wipe, or me just kind of pitching to make sure everything stays dead on his side of the field by playing the Tinkerbell, especially since I have a Null Darkness in hand. I think I have 2 at this point, even potentially. The only cards that matter in my hand, oh, I have a Scarlett. The only cards that matter in my hand at this point are the Welser and the Impact. As long as I keep those in my hand and get to turn 8, the game just becomes over. So at this point I have no reason to cast anything unless I'm going to absolutely kill something and just prevent myself from taking as much damage as possible. Before the draw of my turn, I'm going to use Scarlett's effect to pitch Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic to burn Peter Pan for 5. And then I'm going to recover, and then like I said, this is that combo you could use with Scarlet's. I can pay 1 to cast the Scarlet's from grave and make Peter Pan a 4/4 with 5 damage on it. So it's that kind of round the corner stoning to death that's just really effective. And I can also just leave up 2 will to be able to, again, pitch burn spells as necessary to deal with anything that he has on his board. Because right now, Dark Bookkeeper is not hurting me, and Tinkerbell at most is a 3/3. So an interesting thing happens during this turn, so I'll kind of talk about it when it happens. And this is one of those moments where it's like, remember to read your cards, everyone. And I'm the victim here. I'm the one to blame for not reading this card. Ends up costing me a card that I don't need to cast. He's going to pay 3, or he's rearranging his stones. He's got a Kintaro's Partner, the Sword of Fate, and I don't remember what the other card is in his hand. Pays 1 to play Kintaro's Partner. He's going to apply the minus to Dark Bookkeeper. There's no reason. It's a mandatory minus. Dark Bookkeeper has a lot of stats, so there's really no reason to not just give it a -2/-2. Has a lot of defense. Still has 8, so it's out of my burn range. It's going to attempt to swing in for 5. I'll respond by pitching the Glint of Insight to try to burn it for 5. Now here's the reason where I'm saying always remember to read your cards, because Pete's response here is probably the correct one, except he can't actually do this. Twin Swords of Fate literally says +6 to something you control, +6/+6 to something you control, and -6/-6 to something your opponent controls. If I don't control something for you to minus, you can't cast that spell. And this is a mistake on my part. I deal with it as if it says he can just give the minus to Dark Bookkeeper and respond to him trying to cast it by trying to burn it for another 5 damage. So what is going to happen here is the way the chase is, he's trying to swing, I attempt to burn for 5, he chases to try to pump up 6/6/6, I chase that to burn it for 5, so it'll have 5 damage on it and die before the +6/+6 burn happens. Costs me 2 cards, but it really shouldn't have, because ultimately he couldn't cast the Sword of Fate, and the reason why this is a problem is because now Sword of Fate or Twin Swords of Hope and Despair has been flipped into Sword of Fate, so now he just has that 4-drop removal spell for recursion spell in his RFG that he wouldn't otherwise have had, because I haven't been playing creatures, so he had no way to cast it. Paying for Reunion of Master of the Pupil to dig 5 cards. I see a Welser and a Null Darkness, which is great. So the reason why I think this card is so helpful, Reunion is so helpful for Scarlett, because all of the draw cards that are really in Scarlett's colors cost will, like a lot of will, or are really slow to generate card advantage, and Scarlett pitches a lot of cards. Ultimately, Scarlett doesn't like to pitch cards unless she has to, or unless she has a way to recur them quickly. And most of the time, Reunion is just a 2-drop draw 2, that also digs, because you're playing typically, if you're playing a variant like this, you kind of abandon Mosasaurus, which is something that used to be an idea in this because it's a dinosaur, right? But if you're playing Reunion to dig a little bit more, you want to see it being a red, so you're actually going to play Dino Rider. Dino Rider becomes your dinosaur burn spell. We might cast it on occasion for 6 will. Really, we're probably not going to. Most of the time, we just want it to be a 1-drop 7 damage burn spell. Pete calls a stone here. Gets a mystery castle, Stone of the Dark Castle. Gets another mystery counter. I imagine this is so that he can play Grim and flip it. Plays the Kintaro. I'm going to go ahead and let him gain the triggers. I don't really care. It's just an 8/8, and I have a Null Darkness in hand, so I can kill it if I need to. Swings at the Kintaro. Gotta go ahead and pitch the Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic to burn it for 5. Pass the turn there. Draw. See, I drew into a final battle there. I could pay for the final battle if I want, but I know that he might flip Millium, so there's really no point in doing that. I also don't know if he has a potential Dreams of Flight. He has the Dreams of Flight in the graveyard, right? And I don't want to have to pay this kind of suboptimal amount of life that way. I want to save that final battle until he's flipped Millium, ultimately. Calls for Stone. Magic Stone of Hope. Showing him exactly what I have stone-wise. I have 4 darkness sources, 3 water sources, 3 fire sources, right? Because those are 2 dark depths at the top. And those dark Atlas stones are Scorched Veils. So he's going to pay 1 to play a Wendy. I don't really have any care about the Wendy. It's a 2/3. It's not really doing anything. He's going to attempt to swing in with the Kintaro for 8 damage. And I respond by casting the Null Darkness. We do catch it here that I need to pay 1 more for the Kintaro, so we will go back and catch that here in just a second before anything else happens. As it's going to grave, we're like, wait, you cast it, so you need to pay 1 more for the Kintaro. So I'll pay the black source, so I can keep up the 2 fire sources potentially. So with that, he just passes the turn. Draw for turn. In the recovery, I say, you know what, let's go ahead and just deal with that Kintaro right now because my top deck is a Null Darkness. So I'm going to go ahead and cast the Null Darkness that I just drew before the recovery, so it'll die. Just don't have to deal with having to pay 1 more for spells anymore. I will admit that I kind of cast that a little bit weirdly, and the fact that I like set it on the table after drawing it and then kind of like flipped it weird. So Pete was like, where did that come from? It doesn't have Remnant, which is right. That definitely does not have Remnant. So I have double Welser in hand, which feels really good. So even if 1 dies, I feel pretty safe. So what I'm going to do here is cast the Welser, and then pass the turn. So that way I still have access to like Goddard Welser next turn. And again, if he doesn't kill the Welser, then I'm in a really strong position. Now, ultimately, this is one of those situations where if we had read the card properly and Twin Swords of Fate hadn't been inverted, I'd be pretty safe. But because we did, he can just kill the Welser outright by spending 4 will, which is a little unfortunate. But again, I have a backup Welser too. It cost him a lot of will to be able to do that. I can play a Welser to support it, as well as clone the final battle in my hand, at which point then I just need to wait 1 more turn and then cast the Ancient Impact and the game's over. So he calls for Stone instead of performing Judgment, which feels a little awkward. And then pays 4 for the Sword of Fate and kills my Welser. So Sword of Fate has been used, my Welser's gone, and I'm going to take 2 damage from the Wendy, going down to 38. Swings for 2, go down to 38, plays a... He's thinking about if he wants to play anything else on his turn. Plays the Kintaro. And then gets to give the minus to Wendy, but then recover it. So it's safe from being killed by my creatures that I have played so many of this game. Call for Stone. Gonna go ahead and play World Flame Summoning for 6 to just burn the board and burn him for 6. He's thinking about whether or not to use the Dreams of Flight. Ultimately, it won't. If he rolls a perfect, he might save the Wendy. Or the Kintaro, he might save one of them on a roll of a 6. Otherwise, it's just going to die. So he decides to save the Dreams of Flight potentially for later. So burn him for 6, take him down to 32. Has a Tinkerbell in his hand. I can't see what the other card is. Performs Judgment for Millium after playing Grim. Gets a Heaven's Rift Stone. It's going to go ahead and invert those 2 Stones of Hope, so they now are black-white stones. And then passes the turn to me. So I'm going to go ahead and call stone here. I hit an Ebon home. I pay 6 to play the Welser. And then I'm going to pay 1 black and 20 life to deal -10, but then Welser is going to clone it. So it's going to be another X10. Dealing -20 to the board with a final battle. So at this point in time, there's no way possible for that to be something that he can prevent in terms of saving it. It's just too much, and he only has 1 Dreams of Flight. So both the Grim and Millium are dead at that point. Welser is fine, and all I have to do is survive 1 more turn at 15 life, and the game is over. Draw for turn. Calls the stone, hits a magic stone in the earth, chooses not to try to pay the 3 life for it. Pays 2 for a Kingdom of Diversity Light Palace. Or no, that would be Fairy Tale Kingdom Alexandria. And then the Kintaro, draw for turn. And so I make a really silly play here. My first spell for the turn, I literally could just go pay 8, kill you. But instead what I do is I pay 3, and then I cast Thought Control, which gets cloned by Welser, because it's my first spell, when he only has 1 card in hand. Like I said, a little bit of a misplay on my end. Definitely could have just finished the game off right there. Instead, he chooses to pay the 2 for Path of the Hero, makes it so his Kintaro can't be dealt damage, which means that my Welser's not going to swing in, which is fine. So I start to cast the spell, and I'm like, wait a minute, Welser's already used his clone for the turn, so it's pointless for me to cast the spell right now. I just have to survive 1 more turn, so instead I'll dig by using Reunion of Master and Pupil to see what I can get. See another Welser, another Ancient Impact. So I go ahead and just say, let's just grab them both. So there's the combo pieces right there. So even the interesting thing is, even if he somehow finds a way to kill this Welser, because I haven't Goddarded Welser yet, I literally have the combo again in my hand, perfectly safe. So if that 1 card that he top decks is some way to kill the Welser, I still just kill him next turn, provided I don't mess up again, and not cast the Ancient Impact first. So he plays a Dark Bokuro here, passes the turn to me. I draw into a Dino Rider, and I say, let's be cheeky and discard all of my cards to Scarlett. He has no cards in hand. It's completely tapped out. There's no way for him to deal anything, so I'm going to pay 3 and just completely wipe the board while saving an Ancient Impact, pitching 2 cards to kill Dark Bokuro and 1 card to kill Kintaro. And then I recover, and because I can't mess up the fact that I only have 1 card left in hand, call my last stone, pay 8, and hit him for Ancient Impact, which gets cloned by Welser, neither of which can be cancelled, and there's 40 damage. So huge thanks to Pete for being willing to sit down and let me show off this Spellslinger deck to you guys. Huge thanks to Benjamin Bargetzi for kind of giving me the initial idea. The deck profile with the Scarlett list will be up later this week. We won't have a deck list for the Millium list unless you guys ask for it. But until next time, this is CMO73, signing off.